Hello and welcome to Birth of a New Dimension. My name is Aurora and I'm coming to you today from the beautiful sunny field that is right outside of my home where I'm ingesting wonderful amounts of stellar nutrition from the sun, our nearest broadcaster, and it is my intention to auditorily transmit to you this beautiful sunlight and all of the ideas and nourishment and true unconditional love that comes from it. Especially this time of the year. We're almost at the darkest time of the year for the Northern Hemisphere, so everybody really needs their sunshine. And this is also a very opportune moment to simply connect everyone to the stellar network. So this is a network of consciousness. And also I apologize for any sound of the wind that might be blowing on this microphone or the background noise of any planes that might be flying overhead. So I just completed my daily practice of sun gazing, and I do this every day, even if there's minimal sunshine or even if it's only what I can get through my window. But today I was able to come out here, and what I do is I actually wear a hat in order to shade my physical eyes, especially because I find that just like in the summertime, my skin gets darker in response to how much sunlight I am able to be exposed to. But then, it fades, the tan fades, the protection fades. And then in the middle of the winter, if I have an opportunity to go outside, my skin is much more sensitive. I find that my eyes are the same way. In high summer, I find that I can absorb and comfortably, not have my eyes squinting or tearing, a lot more light and a lot brighter light. But then that protection or that, level of comfort in the sun fades as the sunlight fades. Then during the darker time of the year when I go outside and the light is very bright, it takes time for me to adjust. So usually I wear a hat. Even in the summertime I wear a hat, and I shield my physical eyes from the actual rays of the sun because, again, it is not healthy and good for your physical eyes, which are very light sensitive, to be exposed to too much sun. So you can close your eyelids fully. It is not about the light entering into your physical eyeballs. It is about the light entering into the consciousness aperture that is at the center of your forehead and that connects to a deep inner apparatus inside of your cranium, and that also connects with the crown chakra, or the energy center that shoots out the top of your head, like where a baby's fontanelle is. And the place of intersection of these two areas of your anatomy, deep within your skull, is a very magical place. And that is really the center of a lot of these consciousness exercises. So when I sun gaze, I align that place on my anatomy, that deep interior place in my cranium, with the sun. And I know that might be hard to visualize. It's like when yoga teachers tell you to breathe down into your pinky toes. You're like, my pinky toes do not have lungs. I don't have alveoli there. I don't understand what you're talking about. So I'm using an allegory. When I sun gaze, I align my attention, my inner awareness with the sun and the stellar network. And what it feels like to me is like I have an elephant's trunk, or like a bridge that connects the inside of my skull to the sun. And this is an imaginary bridge, but imaginary does not mean unreal. So now we have to understand your imagination is an actual apparatus that resides inside of you, and I like to say it's the strongest muscle we have on our body. If you can imagine something, then you have the capacity to actually create it in reality. And up until this point in history, we have had to experience the laborious manual manifestation process. First I have a conception, an idea internally, and then you actually have to move your arms and legs and flap your moving mouth parts and do all sorts of things in order to make something actually happen. And I'm thinking now of a vivid memory that I have of working with a very psychically adept friend who's very telepathic. We were just building some tables for my art studio years ago, and we literally shared the plans internally on a telepathic level, like this fast, snapping my finger. But then it took a lot of speaking in order to go to the hardware store and get the right things and do the right measurements, and all of that was just the laborious manifestation process of eventually nailing together these putting up these particular tables that were custom built for a particular place in my studio. And the whole point being that we are now moving into this new dimension. When I call this radio show Birth of a New Dimension, and it's also based on an art piece, an original painting that I made that depicts these events. And I'll describe it to you, but you can go to my website and check it out because a picture's worth 1,000 words. But it shows the Merkaba shapes of a male and female form down at the bottom margin of the painting. And the Merkaba, these are two interpenetrating star tetrahedra, and they are transforming into an octahedron, achieving their higher dimensional vehicle for transport. And Earth, on the higher margin of the painting, her magnetosphere is splitting apart, revealing the shape of the transformative flying rainbow lasagna within. And surrounding all of these are extraterrestrial, extra-dimensional face shapes. And all of these events are occurring right now, even though I painted the painting. Well, I did the drawing for it in 2012, knowing that although I wanted the events to begin to unfold then, that there was still more gestation. The baby wasn't ready to pop out yet. And it's literally been gestating for many years, and I completed the color and painting and activated it with crystals last year, around April. But it has still taken a long time for this birth to go on, so we understand this is happening on a cosmic or a galactic timescale. And we, as beings of this particular time scale who last currently, 100 years if you're lucky, that this is an ongoing process that takes a very long time. So the birth is not instantaneous. It takes a very long time. And our lifespans will also expand. Don't worry. That's why I was saying up until this point, 100 years if you're lucky. And the thing that we are giving birth to is a new dimension of experience. We are literally going to inhabit a new place. And we're not only the mother giving birth, we are also the baby that is being given birth to. So I was joking about that last week, that if you are feeling disheveled inside, like we're going through a very difficult time right now, and I try to keep these broadcasts topical. Not too topical, so that they are universal you can access them at any time and out of order. But right now, we're coming out of the birth canal, and when babies go through the birth canal, their heads get squeezed, there's incredible pressures. There's pressure on their neck and their entire circulatory system and brain and consciousness. It's miraculous that they make it out okay. And this is what we are undergoing. Incredible emotional and psychological and spiritual pressure. And that is all part of the birth process. And what comes out the other end is yourself in a transformed format. So now I'll speak a little bit about the arrangement of your cells. And as you transform your format, the exterior reality or the context within which you are placed is also transformed. So I spoke about this on a Facebook video because it's hard to do it over the radio. The lie that is within a lot of the teachings about the flower of life pattern, this six-petaled shape that has become very popularized in what is called the New Age community right now, like it's spray painted on yoga pants and all sorts of places, and it's just a flat line drawing. And that's like flattening out your consciousness, because what is really supposed to be represented is a three-dimensional biological structure of the cells of your body. And if you understand that this is the clustering, the formation of your physical spheres of the cells of your body, the way that they are clustered together is in this very magical way that creates life. If your cells were just slapped together in a haphazard, willy-nilly fashion, that would not create life. That life, the definition that I am coming up with here, is the pattern that I paint, and that's why I paint this pattern. It is the pattern of energy that flows in the cosmos. And we can also say life is synonymous with God or divinity, this higher organizational principle. It's literally a pattern. And when you, as a bunch of molecules and atoms and consciousness, conform to that pattern, then you get to be, quote-unquote, alive. And on other broadcasts, I've likened this to being a good musician who passed the audition and you got into the cosmic symphony. In order to be here in life, you have to pass the audition. That's called being born in a physical body. It's quite an achievement. A lot of miscarriages happen. A lot of conceptions do not result in a viable pregnancy, and a lot of attempts to conceive, procreative sex, does not result in an actual new life. So creating life is a very magical event, and it means that cellular structure is conforming to this special pattern of energy and consciousness and awareness in the cosmos. And I've also spoken about the beings that I say are like crappy musicians. They're so crappy, they got kicked out of the band. Their instruments were taken away from them. We took away their tubas, and now they're not allowed to play anymore. And these are the occupiers of the interstices. And these are really invaders of consciousness that have been using technology for millennia, for eons, on other planets, that came to our solar system, destroyed a couple of other planets in our solar system, and then came to Earth and have been wreaking havoc on Earth by harming the genetic structure that was once perfect, like a perfect expression of this cosmic music, with a type of overlay. Like they made the strings of your instrument out of tune, changed your perception, changed the ideas or the belief system or the musical notes that you are playing, and transformed the entire social structure and ecological, like biological structure, and literally pointed consciousness at the flowing membrane of death, that this is an area of the body of time. Time is a body, time is a thing, time is alive. And these consciousness invaders tilted you away from the stellar network that you are supposed to be focused on, and instead turned your gaze towards the membrane of death. And that means that many people, it was basically the invention of death. Because up until that point, like, imagine a room of your house, like a fancy sitting room or a parlor that no one ever goes in. It's there, but no one actually occupies it. You might as well get rid of it. Well, that's my description of the interstices, or this membrane, or this membrane between worlds. Sorry about the wind out here. That it was meant to be a place that no one actually occupies. And instead, the genetic invaders changed the tuning of the human body, change the expression of life here in the biosphere, and instead of having a perfect ascension experience every time, it now became more normal for everyone to die, to hit the membrane of death. That at a certain point you would go and live in that room of the house that is supposed to be an unused salon or parlor, and then never get out of there. And that is an aberration. So you are not supposed to die. You're not supposed to have to go and live in the salon, fancy decorated parlor of the house. You're actually supposed to be able to go in through the front door, out through the back door, in and out through any window, live on the roof, explore the basement, basically go wherever you want to go. And what has happened here on Earth is that the genetic tuning has been changed, and that was one of the primary traumas. Death was created, and then humans have circulated around in like a whirlpool or an eddy or a maelstrom or a slightly circular, slightly spiral circulation for many, many thousands of years. And that is like being stuck here. And it's not necessarily a good thing, because we're supposed to be in the schoolhouse for learning and a refinery of consciousness. We're not supposed to have to be here just endlessly circulating forever. That would be defined as a hell. However, the physical realm is not synonymous with hell, although there are a lot of occupiers of the interstices that are trying to make that so. So what is happening right now, as I've said, we are giving birth. The new world that we're giving birth to is a combination of spirit and matter. And we can define spirit as pure energy, or pure consciousness, or pure awareness, or time. Up until this point, as part of this experience of having genetic degradation, humans have been taught an artificial viewpoint or perspective of reality, which basically says that matter, like the physical substances that we see around us and can sense with our five senses, is separate from consciousness. Like dreams and wishes and ideas and imagination are a separate, non-physical interacting level of reality. And that's the main lie that has been perpetrated upon humanity, because your mind absolutely affects physical matter. However, if you tell someone this story that this doesn't happen, then it doesn't happen. So for a very long time, the lie was told that this doesn't happen. Then a little bit of light was shown on humanity with the idea of quantum physics and teachers like Einstein. But Einstein also gave another bar on the cage. Even though he gave greater illumination, he also gave another limitation by saying that nothing can move faster than the speed of light. So all of this is about returning to your fully empowered state. the type of being that we were before our genes were crushed or smashed or distorted. So I'm sitting right here in this beautiful field of sunlight, and I know that that is the original format for this body. In fact, when I came here as a walk-in in 2001, I thought, oh, goody, I'm just going to eat pure sunlight. I didn't understand that I actually had to feed my body physical food, and it was through very difficult trial and error over the course of many weeks that I found out if you do not eat physical food, your body does not feel good, and you get very small and feel very weak, and that you cannot keep going. It's not sustainable. So I learned I had to actually eat physical food, not just sunlight. However, physical food is itself nothing more than solidified sunlight. So I'm here in this beautiful field of green grass, and these are chloroplasts, and they catch photons, and they allay photons on their journey. Any of these little particles of light, if they didn't come to Earth and bounce onto a chloroplast, would have simply traveled endlessly on their journey. But photons are feelers, and they came to here, they felt what it felt like to be stuck on a plant. And they felt what it felt like for that plant to turn it into a starch or a sugar. And then, I could eat that plant, or an animal could eat that plant, and then I would have that consciousness flowing through me. But again, it's not trapped consciousness. It is metabolized. It's flowing in its metabolism. This is very different than the idea of being stuck, circulating in the salon or parlor of your house and not being able to leave. That's the whole point. That these benevolent energy systems, like the stellar network, function on freedom as a basic core value, and also on the idea of energy flowing in an unimpeded fashion. So sometimes I say a chloroplast traps a photon, but it's not really trapped. It is temporarily housed within the plant structure, and then it goes somewhere else. It continues on its journey. It doesn't just stay in a piece of grass forever. It goes into a new format, and then is consumed in a new format and a new format. And the whole idea is when a conscious being eats that photon or expressions of that photon, that consciousness is then broadcast to the stellar network. So I was just out here having a beautiful little drink of my morning juice, some beautiful mango, carrot, cannabis juice. And that is all energy that comes from the stellar network. It's all solidified light. And while I drank it, I transmitted my consciousness experience of drinking that juice to the stellar network. I connected with it. I said, thank you for this juice. Here's what it tastes like. And this is not like some vampire is sucking my life force energy off of me at all. This is like thanking the person that gave me the thing that I am enjoying for the thing that I am enjoying. And I do not diminish my enjoyment of that juice at all by thanking the stellar network, the origin of the consciousness, for the consciousness that I am ingesting. And I also understand that there is no separation between myself and the stellar network. That's me, in a different format, in a different place, moving at a different speed and coming from a different angle. But that's me. So I also understand that I won't always have these taste buds, won't always have this physical structure. I have it right now. I am able to take a recording of this experience. I'm here in the analog. I have a physical body, right? And I can take a recording of this experience and save it forever. That's like digitizing it, even though I'm not part of the transhumanist agenda. I'm not promoting that you upload your soul to a giant mainframe for all of eternity. Far from it. Because you don't need a giant mainframe. You have the stellar network. And I don't give it to you. It's there. I'm not the creator of it. I mean, I'm part of it. It is there. It was created by an enormous, grandiose consciousness. It is ancient. And that's the whole point that I'm trying to say. There's a lot of interlopers, lower level, either demiurges or occupiers of the interstices or beings who use technology. They did not create the stellar network. They did not create consciousness. They did not create the energy that they are using. They're just co-opting something that already exists or hacking it. So it's like this. If I bought a store-bought cake, I'm just drinking a little bit more of my morning juice here. If I bought a store-bought cake and then I brought it home and I cut it up into all sorts of pieces and, poured extra sugar syrup on it and put it in a plate and then gave it to you, I could not pass that off as homemade. That is like someone else made that actual substance, but I took it and just transformed it a little bit and presented it to you. That is what most of the beings who have created religion and presented themselves as gods, as deities, to Earth. That is mostly their approach. These are not the actual creators of cake. These are not the actual creators of atoms, and photons, and vibrating energy fields, and consciousness, and the stellar network. That was really created by an expert, a master baker, a great composer, a great conductor that knows how to fit all of these elements and variables together in a beautiful way that creates life. It takes an expert to do that. It does not take an expert to simply take something that was once alive or elements of life and modify them rather into a different format. It's just like in the art world. You know something? If you're an artist, or call yourself an artist, but what you do is you buy something that's already been created, like, if you buy whatever, a plastic doll at a dollar store, and then you take that doll home and you modify it, that is not the same as if you actually got clay or plasticine and created your own doll and made your own form. Like, it's just not the same. So in terms of the great artist that is behind this reality, it is that great artist that created life, that structure of consciousness and life. It's that great artist that created Earth and Earth's connection to the sun and our entire solar system. Our entire solar system is supposed to be like a family of consciousness, or like a band. And we have had several deaths in the family. There's something happened to Mars, something happened to Malduk, which is now the asteroid belt, something happened to Venus. And that has progressively made our band more and more out of tune. And it's not just our solar system. I know that there are misconceptions about the idea that Earth is quarantined from the rest of the cosmos because Earth is the only place that has this infection. Ha, ha, ha. No, that's not true. There are technology-using extraterrestrials that literally infest, other areas of the Milky Way, other areas of the cosmos, other areas of the galaxies. And it's an infestation or an infection. It is like a disease. And it's not something that is a good thing. So what is happening on Earth right now is the creation of an antidote or a template for. So all of us that are here and all of us throughout the cosmos, we are connected. We are connected through our bridge of consciousness. We are connected on a bridge of unconditional love. And it is also part of that fictional separation, the fictional separation of matter or energy matter versus energy, or matter versus spirit. That's part of the false narrative structure that has been taught to humans in this time and place. So I was trying to say about Einstein that he gave some light to this world by beginning to get people to understand that your mind influences reality. That when you really study physics, physics is the laws of the physical world and essentially what we see with our five senses. But if you study it enough and use math as a form of extrasensory perception, what you find out is that at the very, very, very tiny level of matter doesn't act like matter, and it responds directly to thought and to consciousness and to your mind. So when we speak about the fabric of time and space, to be impeccable, we should add in the element of consciousness. But science at its present point isn't prepared to do that because science is not prepared to either measure consciousness or weigh it or recognize it. Like, how much does your consciousness weigh? Science is not prepared to look at that in any way, so it can't speak about it, so it's just not adding that to the equation. But that's an essential part of what is going on. And the birth of the new dimension is removing that artificial separation that's the narrative structure of reality. That when you look at the world, you tell yourself a story that says, my thoughts cannot influence reality. My thoughts cannot influence the greenness of the grass, or whether the grass is growing, or whether the driveway is actually there, or whether that car is actually there. However, your thoughts actually do influence the greenness of the grass, whether it's growing, whether this reality exists, and whether there are cars or people or other objects around you. That what we are really understanding is we are submerged within a sea of uncollapsed waveforms. It's an abstract world of probabilities and possibilities. And it is using the apparatus of our consciousness and our perception and our vehicle of our physical body that we transform those waveforms into actual physical reality. And when you begin to understand that and take radical self-responsibility for the manifestation process, you then can become an artist of reality. And this is a wonderful, good, empowering, happy-making thing because it means that you can create a beautiful world, beautiful reality. My artwork, in my paintings, if you check out my paintings at flyingrainbowlasagne.com, you'll see that they're all very intentional. I don't really work with like splashes and drips and other types of techniques that some painters use. All of my paint and the pigments that are there, it's all placed very intentionally. Like it's not there by accident. And if something drips or blobs or squishes in the wrong place, I actually go to great lengths to scrape it off or wipe it off or remove it or cover it up so that really everything that's there is there intentionally and intentfully. And when I understood when making those paintings that people would go over them with a fine-tooth comb and look at them and say, why did you make this part green? Why is this part turquoise? Why is this shape this? And when I do and structure my work, I am prepared to stand behind it and to say, this is green because of this. And this color is this way because of this. And this is this shape because of this. Like there's a reason behind all of it. And taking responsibility for one's life creation is a very similar process where we have to understand we are creating this framework of experience. It's like a mural because you're not just painting your own private painting. You are painting in a reality where others are also painting. So you take responsibility for the aspects that you are creating, but also understand that others are creating their own aspects. But when we look at the time field and our genetic level of being entwined, we understand we are all affecting one another. So, if you tune into this radio broadcast, you are volunteering to be affected by my voice and by my ideas and by, my basic energy structure and my character and who I am as a person. However, even if you never tuned in and never listened and never knew about a person named Aurora, you would still be affected by the broadcast of my mind. But it would be from an internal level, like the interior broadcasts that connect us through DNA. Because everybody who has consciousness is connected. Everyone who uses DNA is like a tool or a type of artifice that has been redeemed and is part of the network of consciousness that is that perfect pattern that makes us all connected. So these strings that are vibrating inside of you are like the strings of your instrument, just like a violin or a guitar. And you're not just making music for yourself. You are making music that affects the environment, and you are making music that affects other people. And just like a sea of pendulums or metronomes is a better example, if they are not synchronized, but they are on a slightly vibratory table, then the table is able to help them to synchronize. They transfer energy through their base. Someone sent me a beautiful video of this. It's like an actual little science experiment. In humanity, basically your energy centers are like those metronomes. Energy centers are chakras. Chakras means spinning wheel. It comes from Sanskrit, from a charioteer. And everybody is spinning at their own particular rate. And some people are faster than others. And it is definitely desirable to have more energy and have faster energy centers because it's just like a bicycle. If you are riding a bicycle and your wheels have a lot of momentum, you have greater stability in your flight. And when you slow down, then that is when you start to wobble and fall over. And the stability that we are looking for is the stability of our consciousness going through time, so that we can choose to be on a timeline that does not end on the membrane of death, but instead goes through that little tiny bullseye target that is at the top of the membrane, the top of the time vortex, that is the ascension pathway. It is how we get out of this level of reality instead of walking in endless circles, trudging in endless circles in the fancy decorated salon of the house. So with your mind and consciousness and perception, you don't just influence reality a little. You influence reality a lot. You have an entire world that you are creating as the artist or as the god or goddess of your world right now. And when you begin to realize that, and you are the artist of your reality, you then begin to say, this part of this painting does not please me. Like, we don't have to say it's ugly. Let's just say it, quote unquote, needs work, right? And you could say, this part over here needs some work. Let's pick up a paintbrush and do something about it. And I've had paintings where I'm like, this yellow is horrible. It needs to be completely scraped off, and we need to put green there instead, or put something that is way less hot, less vibrant, less distracting. You are allowed to look at your life or to look at the contextual reality that you are a collaborative partner within and say, this needs improvement. This part over here does not please me. And we can even collaborate together as artists of reality and say, this part over here needs improvement. So the beginning part is just your own body and your own life and your own consciousness and awareness. That is really what you are 100% in control of in terms of your personal canvas. So your body is where you have the most freedom to express this truth of perception. And it can be an experience of radical healing, like radical, when you take responsibility and say, this body is my creation and my manifestation, you can then structure it in the way that you choose to structure it. So that's a good segue. Pardon me if I'm jumping around in a very nonlinear way in this presentation here. Back to the idea of that flower of life pattern and the cellular structure of your body and being empowered with that information. Because there is a bridge of understanding that you have to apply with your perception in order to get from seeing yourself as only a physical cellular structure, but also to understand that you have a time structure. And that's what I paint in my paintings, the interpenetration of these two worlds, which is basically how your chakras are formatted, or how these energy centers are formatted. So chakras are not just glowing balls of light, although many people paint them like that. That's a shorthand that is so disempowering that we really need to get rid of it. They're polygons. I want to say geometric structures, but that's not the right word. It's not impeccable, because geometric means measuring Earth. This is not Earth that we are measuring, but these are polygons. They are multi-sided shapes, and they fit together like interlocking puzzle pieces in a nested proportional pattern. And those interlocking shapes interpenetrate with the interlocking shapes of the physical structure of the cells of your body. And making these two matrices work well together, it's like making the instruments of the band work well together. It is essential for health, and it is essential for longevity, and it is essential for completing this birth process that we are going through. So now I can get on to artificial people and, the degradation of the human genetic structure. So I speak about this a lot at the end of what is known as the mythological time of Atlantis, which was actually not just one continent on the planet Earth. It was a worldwide, like throughout our whole planet, antediluvian or pre-flood sophisticated culture that did not have to use technology like the clank metal technology that we use. Some technology was used in the form of crystals. These crystals, though, are alive. This is not like taking a crystal out of the ground and milling it and, shaving its faces off so that it conforms to what you feel like it should look like. This is literally using crystals as entities that are embodied themselves and that grow and shape themselves into the shape that they're supposed to be. So that was the level of technology that was used, not really something that would be considered separate or different from the natural world. And the bodies of the humans that were here were also not some separate artificial thing from the natural world, in the way that the human domesticated form in its present state is separated from what we define as the natural world. And a lot of the story of modern humanity and Western culture is the basic topic of man versus nature, right? This is not, I'm not saying man, but that is how it is portrayed in history books. The idea of humanity having to tame nature, like Western European culture coming across the Atlantic Ocean and coming to the continent of North America, and then having to quote unquote tame the nature that was there, and even quote unquote tame some of the people that were there too, right? But what that really is humans who have adopted this technological overlay then enforced their willpower and that technological overlay on the entire landscape of North America and many other cultures, and eventually the entire surface of Earth. So now there is this technological overlay on the entire surface of Earth, and it involves humans who use technology. And now there are very few humans who do not use technology or who use a minimum amount of technology to survive. And human bodies have even developed like an interdependency, like a necessity that humans need to have technology in order to survive. And the transhumanist agenda is an agenda that is put forth by these original consciousness invaders. They never left. They're here. They're still occupying humanity, the human genome. They've created human society. They've created all of this technology. And those original consciousness invaders are trying to bring humans completely away from their natural form. And it's not just through the implantation of something like a microchip or a nanotechnology or a filament of metal inside of you. It is through the rearrangement of the cellular structure into an unnatural cellular structure. So if your cells are supposed to have this beautiful pattern to them, that is like a polygon, and the way that it is created, it's just like a firework. I think that's why people associate fireworks with the orgasm and sexual conception, the procreative sex completion. Like, yes, you did it. That firework internally creates this energy form, again, a polygon, like a geometric form, but I'm trying not to use that word, that is the energy form that the cells of that body grow into. And this is a very magical thing that in that moment, it creates like the template for activity that the cells of reality then grow according to that template. And of course, there are many attempts to create life, quote unquote, but not doing it using humans or using biological structures. And so the closest that has been happening so far in the human world is, in vitro fertilization, where the fertilization process happens not in a human, but then the eventual cell structure is gestated in a human. Well, just like at the end of Atlantis, there were absolute slaves and genetic degradation to such a point that it caused the degradation of consciousness on our planet. Because your genes and your consciousness are an expression of Earth, and it destabilizes Earth when your genes or your energy centers aren't allowed to spin and flow and dance in the way that they're supposed to, in an unfettered way. And that's why Earth destabilized, about 10 or 20,000 years ago. The continents shifted, the entire physical structure and the axis of Earth all shifted, just like a bicycle. That wheels stopped moving fast enough to uphold the bicycle, and the rider fell over. Earth is now like the bicycle and the rider that has fallen over, and the entire, 6,000 years of recorded human history is the history of humanity lying in the puddle by the side of the road because you've fallen off of the bicycle. And right now we have this opportunity to regain all of our momentum. And that is what is happening by reconnecting to the stellar network. So I won't give you such a dire forecast and say, oh, you're sitting in a puddle by the side of the road, without giving you a solution to how to get up. And this solution is called the Flying Rainbow Lasagna. It's not just a quirky, fun, or charming name. It's actually a shape that you can transform your DNA into and regain all of those lost capacities that we had, like the capacity to connect directly to the stellar network and abrogate the necessity of physical food. And this is a necessary step on the road of development so that we can eventually leave this planet in the right way. We're not supposed to leave a planet by filling up toothpaste tubes full of squashy food and getting our canisters full of oxygen and putting on a metal space suit with a diaper and getting inside of a clank metal space vessel and blasting ourselves off, on a firecracker out of the physical gravity well and into the vacuum of space. That is not how we're supposed to get off our planet. We are supposed to cultivate our body structure to the point where we are so integrated with the stellar network that we do not require any accoutrements in order to make this journey. You don't have to bring all of your food with you because you eat sunlight. You don't have to bring all of your oxygen with you because you create your own microclimate. You don't have to fly in a clank mental spaceship because you fly on wings of consciousness powered by unconditional love. That's not just a airy-fairy hippie ideal. It's an actual fuel. And if you get together enough unconditional love, then you have enough energy to, levitate, or let's say, transcend the physical aspects of gravity on a planet. But of course, you wouldn't merely levitate across the vast reaches of space. Sorry about the wind. You would fold time and space to get to where you wanted to go. So all of this is, you're radically changing your idea of how you would even do things, and changing that software program is part of restructuring your body and part of restructuring reality. So if you have a physical body that has not been sullied or tainted or harmed or degraded by technology, and when I say that, I don't mean like you can still get onto the ascension pathway even if you've been breathing in air that is filled with nanoparticles from chemtrails, even if you've eaten genetically modified corn syrup. Like, that's not what this is about. There are some people who have intentionally degraded their physical structure of their body by participating in cloning rituals. And this is very similar to what happened at the end of Atlantis, where there were, you could call them hybrids. Basically, it's like the island of Dr. Moreau. Any science fiction horror story that you're familiar with where genes are taken and distorted, and humans are crossed with animals, humans are crossed with other beings in order to make distorted creatures. That all happened at the end of Atlantis. That was part of how the bicycle fell over into the mud. And mostly it was about slavery. That you're supposed to have a free willpower, and that free willpower makes your genes act and dance in a particular way that gives you momentum that keeps them spinning. Yes, your genes are constantly spinning and whirling and twirling. It's part of their replication process. It's part of the dance of being alive. And when that replication process and dance is inhibited, not only does it make you no longer alive, but it makes you a slave. And in Atlantis, they absolutely perfected the technology that was used, sorry about the wind here, to control and manipulate consciousness and make people do what they want you to do. And so a large proportion of the population at that point was controlled through a type of broadcast. Like, imagine a cell phone tower that broadcasts a mind control ray, and you're so mind controlled that you cannot even think, I am being mind controlled. You cannot even think, I am a slave. And here's the scary part. How do you know that's not consciously right now being done to you? And something very similar is happening. But in this time and place, there are people who have a lot of money and people who are willingly participating in having their bodies cloned or synthetically replicated. And it's being portrayed to them as getting a type of upgrade, but it is the worst type of downgrade you could imagine. Because the bodies that are cloned do not conform to this higher polygon pattern of consciousness. They are not divine bodies. When you conceive of a body, with this, I want to say geometric pattern, but that's not it, but this beautiful pattern of energy, it is able to fully integrate with the stellar network. And when you create a body where all of the cells are just squashed together willy-nilly, then that body is totally out of tune with the cosmos, to the point where it theoretically should not even be alive. And the only way that it's alive is through the use of technology. So you can look at, if we used bulldogs as an example. These dogs have been selectively bred, which is a type of genetic engineering over time, by humans who are also domesticated, to the point where now most bulldogs cannot have a natural birth and a natural delivery. Most of them have to be delivered by cesarean section. So if these dogs actually lived not in a domesticated format without human assistance, they could not continue to reproduce and breed. They would die in one generation if humans did not intervene and help to keep them alive. And this is the same type of degradation that has been applied to the human form at this point, where cloned or replicated beings are made, so that it's not that they're unnatural in the sense of like a cyborg, like the movie The Terminator, which is what I think a lot of people envision, a metal skeleton covered in flesh, or even a flesh being that has little tiny microchips inserted into its brain. I am speaking about a technology that is beyond that. It's not necessarily a flesh being that has metallic aspects to it. It is the idea that that flesh being could not even be in existence, and its existence would not be supported were it not for technology, just like the bulldogs that cannot even be born without a cesarean section. So when you look at a little bulldog, you're not looking at a cyborg being, replicant, but you are looking at something that can only exist because of unnatural technology. And there are people, or former people, they once were people, that are on the surface of Earth now that fall into that category, that their bodies have literally been changed. So, and the way that it has been portrayed is that they are getting some kind of a betterment, but really what's happening is they have lost their divinity, or they have lost their divine connection. And once that happens, like if your consciousness is transferred into a container for consciousness that totally does not conform to this pattern of higher consciousness energy, it means that you are not part of that divine and natural world anymore. And so what is happening right now with this birth of a new dimension? Everybody's consciousness that can is tuning into the stellar network. That this is how you survive. You do not survive by building a bunker. You do not survive by having a pantry full of meals ready to eat, or canned beans, or whatever you're expecting. You survive this transformation experience by transforming. And so that's why it's just very funny if you think just think about the creator or God or a higher divinity, divine being. Would that being say, okay, this planet is going to be, go through a transformation. I'm not going to say destroyed. Let's say it's going to go through a transformative process, and I'm only going to reserve those consciousnesses who have enough money. Like, that is totally ridiculous. If it's like the only beings that are going to stay alive are the beings that have enough money to buy a bunker, or buy a ticket into a bunker, or something like that, or have enough money to buy enough cans of beans to survive, that is not a good society. It would be like saying, I'm only going to save all of the English bulldogs. I'm not going to save any of the mutts. I'm not going to save any of the wild wolves. I'm only going to save the English bulldogs. No, that would not be a good selective process at all. So the consciousnesses that are going to continue onward instead of being saved, because this all religious language goes down to punishment and reward. This is not about punishment and reward. This is about whether or not you have done your exercises, and whether or not you have cultivated your consciousness to the point where you can do the soul migration. And this is like an athletic achievement where you transform the physical structure and non-physical structure of your body until it is one, and until it is perfectly integrated with the not only planetary structure, but the structure of the stars. And you do not have to, quote unquote, go somewhere else in order to do this. Like the idea of the Christian rapture and being physically removed from Earth, or in the New Age, picked up on board a UFO, that is not how I envision things. I envision this as a transformation of the place right where you are. And that literally there is a consciousness energy pattern that is here right now, that if your cellular structure and your consciousness structure does not conform to that energy pattern, you will not be sustainable. That consciousness that is out of the pattern is no longer sustainable. And it was never supposed to be sustainable. As I said, the audition to be here and to be alive means that you conform to that pattern. You think the right thoughts, and your cells are shaped in the right way, and you play the instrument of your body in the right way. And if you do not do those things, then you're not supposed to be in reality or in the band. And that the cosmos and Earth and our experience of human society right now is all highly distorted, because there are a lot of beings that are still active in the band that are not supposed to be here. So some of them are occupiers of the interstices who, like comments from the peanut gallery, shout out during a performance. And some of them actually hijack the containers of people who are in the band, who have instruments, and try to take over and play their own music and mess up the beat of the rest of the band. And that's also part of those containers, that process of making What I mean is, how do you influence quote-unquote scientists on Earth to make these technology processes possible? Like, if you come to Earth and there's no technology, just like if you went to another planet and you were like, great, I need to make whatever type of high-tech microchips or crystals that I need to make, but they don't have a lab here. It's all just cavemen. So I'm going to have to build a lab so that I can even make the things that I need to make. So one way that you can influence human culture is to say to people that have technology, you need to build a lab or a structure where I can make these things happen that need to happen. This is the occupiers of the interstices who got kicked out of the band, influencing people who have bodies to make the technology so that the occupiers of the interstices can come into this world. And yes, CERN is part of that. I do not mean to bring this up, though, in order to make you feel anxious or agitated. Quite the opposite. I'm actually here in this broadcast on this beautiful sunny day to tell you about the inevitability of the return to the stellar network, and each one of our own bodies reconnecting. You reconnect on a cellular level, means every single one of your cells is now connected to the sun and to the rest of the stars and to the galactic center. And every one of your atoms is connected, and all of the energy that flows through you is coming to you directly from the stars, and that it's not just you having this experience and then walking around in endless circles in the salon instead of exiting. It's you broadcasting in real time your experience. Just like I drink my juice and I tell the stellar network, this is what this delicious juice tastes like. We are supposed to be constantly broadcasting our experience back to the stellar network. Photons are feelers, and we are supposed to be sharing with the source of those photons what we are doing with them. Here's my body. I'm sitting in this chair. I'm moving my mouth parts. I'm thinking these thoughts. I'm holding my hand like this. I'm having this life experience. And again, this is not serving an extraterrestrial overlord. You're really serving yourself. You are really bouncing back and reflecting or sending out a digital broadcast of your analog experience to yourself, that you emanated yourself here, and that you are having this experience, and that you are telling yourself, hey, I'm having this experience, and that is then empowering, like a biofeedback loop that then tells you, well, do I need to change anything in this experience? Because if your experience is uncomfortable or dangerous or detrimental to health and vitality in some way, then the sun needs to know about that. Like, hey, I'm in this car, and this car is about to smash into a brick wall. It's about to hit the membrane of death. The sun needs to know, the stellar network needs to know, something needs to be done, change the trajectory of that vehicle. Well, guess what? Earth doesn't have to die. Even though there is a heavy eschatological or quote-unquote end-of-the-world catastrophe religious program that's running right now. A lot of people think that the end of the world has to happen, a Jesus figure has to come, or a Messiah figure has to come in order to save everyone. You have to have total destruction to have total renewal. That is not true. You can have a total transformation, and it does not have to be violent. You can have, like any birth, it can be a beautiful, serene, peaceful birth. Imagine a birth where all of the cells of your body all of a sudden integrate perfectly into the structure of time, and you become one with divinity. And imagine that happening on a massive scale. Imagine all of the living people on Earth and all of the grasses and animals of Earth and the microbes. Imagine that happening in the entire cosmos. Imagine the entire band getting in tune and having the singular thought, I am God. Imagine what would happen if all of us got together and we played that song, the song that says, I am God, and we all played that song together. That is what is going to happen. So people are afraid of destruction. That's because that's what happened at the end of Atlantis. That's the primary trauma that we experienced. When you have a traumatic experience like that, you often expect it to be repeated over and over. You know, like if you have a rape or an attack, you think that's just the way life is, and that happened once, and therefore the door is open, it can happen again and again and again, therefore making it a self-fulfilling prophecy of horrible nightmares, right? But what you need to know is that we can have the corrective experience. In Atlantis, we had the experience of falling off the bike, smashing over to the side, falling in a puddle, and being there for several thousand years. And we can now have the experience of actually being raised up out of the puddle, dust it off, get the mud off your clothes, get your bicycle going again, and bicycle your way across the sky like, you know, a scene from a movie, and reconnect to all of the stars and all of that beauty. That means that you don't have to eat physical food anymore. You don't have to experience disease or physical death anymore. We can radically restructure how we share ideas and energy on the planet, and we can prepare for space travel in the way that experts do star travel, with our physical bodies and our intelligence bodies transformed. So I'm at the end of this broadcast, but thank you so much for being with me on this journey where literally we are the person giving birth, we are the baby giving birth, and this new reality is here right now. Please, let's paint this into a beautiful, beautiful new reality. Thank you.